All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Vitalogy podcast. Ryan, hello.
Josh, it's good to see you, man.
It's really good to see you.
Yeah.
It's really good to see
How
you.
many weeks has it been?
It has
since
been
we've-
too many weeks.
It has been too many weeks.
Too many
Yeah.
weeks. And if you're out there joining us, it's been summertime. That's been some of the issues.
It has been summertime.
been-
It still
it's been
is
summer.
for some people.
Yeah, right. I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
We kind of unintentionally took 2 weeks
Right.
off. That was
You've had some things going on.
we've had some things going on. Yeah. Some big things that
Yeah.
has been hard things too. And so this is one of those things you don't just it's hard to dance around it. And but yeah, me and my family have been going through some grieving these last 2 weeks. In fact, I think it was like on a Tuesday night. I left, went up to Pasadena, where I was born. I was born and raised in Pasadena, but went up there because my dad he had a seizure. He was pretty sick, and I knew there was some hard conversations that we needed to have with my mom and my siblings about what's next. But I didn't know that stuff would move quite as fast as it did.
Yeah.
But so I went up there thinking I'd actually come back here on Wednesday. I may even mention I might not make it to the podcast.
Yeah.
So we were like, don't worry. And thought I think I packed for one night, just kind of clothes for the next day to go up to Pasadena.
Did you have to bust out like a high school Guns N' Roses shirt up there from your old room?
No, I don't think I did wear some of my dad's clothes though.
Okay.
We're about the same size. But yeah, we went up there and it turned out that that day when I saw him, he was doing really bad. So my dad he's struggled with dementia for the last couple of years, and it's called frontotemporal dementia. It's a terrible, awful thing.
Yeah.
It's just one of these where it's similar to Alzheimer's in a sense, except just faster.
Mm-hmm.
So it moves through people, and he had long lost his ability to know who we were, and his brain was just shutting off things, like his body was shutting down. And so by the time I got there, the doctor had just told my family that my dad couldn't breathe, he couldn't swallow anymore. He couldn't swallow on his own. So his body was not allowing him to. And the good news is he wasn't feeling hungry because his body is shutting down those things also. So he never once even seemed hungry or thirsty, but he couldn't swallow. And so we had to make the hard decision to bring him home to hospice. He got to come home, and just under 5 days later, he passed away.
Wow.
So
is your whole family able to be there?
Oh my goodness. There's never a good time to lose your dad. That's one of the things. And you know this, you lost your mom.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a good time to do it. It's not a good way. And yet if you could go surrounded by family, surrounded by, we sang songs and prayed and read scripture together. And it was the five of us. So of two brothers and sisters, and then my mom and my dad were all together to the very end.
Wow.
We actually all spent the night there the night before, which was kind of unique. So there were five of us. It was special, but also terrible.
Yeah.
I got to kind of be there at the end and hold his hand while he died. Man, that's something you don't forget.
Yeah.
And so this has been this is a week and a half or so after that, and week and 2 days.
And a week and 2 days.
Yeah.
Still feels pretty fresh.
It does, man. So yeah, so you got me here at a raw moment. It is, and I didn't think it would be this raw.
What's in the grief journey? What surprised you the most?
Well, what surprised me the most, I think, is that that I would be grieving as much as, well, really as much as I am. Now, here's the thing, because the reason is I thought that I'd be a little bit more relieved
Right.
because he was not himself. My dad hasn't known who I am for a good, I mean, at least a year and a half, maybe more. He hasn't been him. And so I kind of thought, he'll be home. And it'll be kind of like a joyous thing, which for that I'm so thankful that I know where he is. I know he's in a better place, all those things, right?
Yeah.
I know the stuff that everybody says. And yet at that moment, I was missing my dad from 4 years ago. You know, it was like, that's what I was grieving. And I'm realizing I'm kind of grieving the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Is what I am, and the loss of the future. And in some ways, it's such a beautiful thing because it's not like I don't have these memories of him. I don't have a lot of memories of him when he's sick, or that's not the thing that I miss.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah.
It's like all of the memories from childhood come up, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure this has got to be. I mean, you went through this. It was pretty quick and sudden. And well,
my mom was.
I'm sorry.
My mom was sick for a year and a half.
She was. That's right.
But without a diagnosis,
That's
we
right.
sort of, there was always this like, we're gonna find out. Like my dad was vigilant about trying to find some sort of cure for whatever was going on. You know, Mayo Clinic and all sort. I mean, he was a champ, and so even towards the end, it was like, okay, we were like weeks away or days away from these IVIG treatments that we thought, okay, maybe this is gonna, and so to the point where they would never put her on hospice care because no diagnosis and no timeline. They're going, sorry, we don't know.
Wow.
So it was long, and it was a year and a half of slow decline, but the end, I think the end is quick regardless. It does quick.
It feels too soon.
And those feelings that you're wrestling with of like, even just, I can remember thinking, I wish I would have gone and visited more, even though she wasn't really aware and there was not a lot of interaction. So I can remember thinking, gosh, wish I would have gone more, even though it was hard to go.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so here I am. This is where, thanks. It's you gotta keep moving on. And it was really sweet. I got to, okay. Here's where I am. I'm seeing everybody. Greetings to everybody. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you so much for these kind words. People are leaving in the comments, and you can always join in. But one of the things that
you're like, yada, 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 all the stuff I normally say about commenting. I'll say it.
Yeah.
Today.
That's right. Yeah. But it was surprising to me. I did all the things that I don't think I tell people not to do.
What do you
so?
What?
All the things. So here's the thing: we walk through grief with people all the time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I've helped people through, and I think I've been helpful. Right. At least no one's told me like, yeah, Josh, that was the opposite of helpful. So that's good. Maybe they're just being nice to me. I don't know, but I think I've been helpful. I mean, here, Mark is with us here. I got to be there with him and his family as they lost Buzz. So great. It was a powerful experience even to be a part of. But here I've walked through with people, but I've never lost someone this close.
Yeah.
And so I think I thought that I was pretty good at grief because I knew the stuff, I knew the things. And so he dies on a Monday, and I come back home and I'm sitting around and what do I do? So I thought, I'm gonna come to the office. So I came in on Tuesday into the office, and he's laughing. I'm laughing because it was really dumb. It was really not very smart thing to do. I walked around and people would come up to me, the nicest people, and they'd just say, "Oh, Josh, how are you doing?" And I'd be like, "I don't know." And I'm like,
Why am
I here? And they'd say, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I don't know. I thought it would be helpful. I don't know what I'm doing." You don't know what you're doing, and I had to realize that's okay.
It is okay.
It was okay to be a mess, and I felt as useless as ever.
Grief is like, I mean, it's sneaky.
Oh yeah.
I can. There's still moments where I'm like, oh wow, where did that come from?
Yeah.
But I think like you walking even right now through this firsthand is you'll be all the more equipped to walk with people well through it. And there's something about that firsthand experience. I think that's 2 Corinthians chapter 1, right? That we comfort others with the same comfort that we've received from the Lord. I think there's something significant about that where you'll be able to say to people, yeah, you don't need to go to work.
Take a day or two. Yeah. And then that ended up turning into the better part of a week, which was good. I needed.
Yeah.
But I came back, and I taught on Sunday a class, and it was, I got up and said, and this, I'm kind of saying this to you here as well, to you listening, to you doing this. This is helpful. This is part of, this is good for me to process, but sometimes it felt like it was more for me than it was for them. And I told them that. I said, guys, I said, I'm not 100%. In fact, I don't even know if I'm 50% today. But I know that God's word is stronger than I am. And so I want to teach the Bible.
Amen.
And they allowed me to. This is Sojourners, which is a class. They loved on me. It was great. I was
That's beautiful.
It was sweet. And got to share from my heart and share from the scriptures. And it was healing for me to say, like, okay, I can do this.
I can do this.
We can move on.
Yep.
Dad would want me to. And so we can do this.
We can
today. And we can move on.
We can laugh and we can cry and everything in between.
Oh man. And the sneaky part, there's some sneaky people. These women today are praying. There's a group of women who come here at the church and pray. They pray for us.
Yeah.
Okay. They're praying for you.
I love seeing people praying around our
thing.
Campus. Every time I walk past a group praying, I'm like, pray, you guys pray for me, please.
Yes.
And our rest of our team. But man, I just love seeing it.
Oh no. I was walking by today, and I was going. I was in a groove. I was kind of like, man, I'm getting some stuff done. This is good. I'm walking by, and one of them,
Josh is back.
Oh yeah, not for long. One of them just sees me, and she goes, "You," and she points at me through glass, okay, and says, "Come here." She says, "You come here," and I go, "Oh boy, all right." She says, "We're praying for you," and that was it. These women, this is like they. When they pray, God hears.
Yep.
Right. These are these
I know
women.
that group. Yep.
And they just prayed for me, and they're holding my hand, so I can't even wipe tears away. So my eyes are just, I'm losing it. It was beautiful, and I left there and I'm supposed to work now. So that's where I am. So
glad you're here, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we grieve with you.
Thanks, man.
I think one of my favorite passages in the scriptures about grief is 1 Corinthians chapter 4, where Paul's writing to the First Thessalonians. What did I say?
He said Corinthians, but Thessalonians.
First Thessalonians chapter 4. Paul's writing to the church at Thessalonica and says, "We grieve, but not as those without hope."
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that the scriptures are honest enough to say, yeah, we need to grieve. It's good.
It's true.
It's not like we can't avoid it. We shouldn't avoid it. It's part of the way that God begins to restore and the way that God begins to heal, but we don't grieve as those who have no hope. So even our grief is laced with this light of one day.
One day. That's right.
Your dad's gonna hear his name. He's gonna, he already's with Jesus face to face, but one day he will walk out of the grave.
Yep.
Restored body.
Yep.
Yeah. Never to taste death again.
I know. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. It really is. And so, and yet, here we go. We move on. And so we what we are going to do is move into some really important things to talk about today. And so we're gonna dive into the Psalms again.
Yeah.
All right. And so
Let's do that.
because what we do here, if you're joining us, I see a bunch of you here. So good to see you. We've got Amy from Colorado. We've got
Amy.
Mark and Corinne. Hello there. Yeah, thanks so much. And Kara and Irene and Gwen, and oh man, so good to see everybody joining in and saying hi. If you're out there, please do. What we often do here is sit around and get to talk through the sermon that we just heard. So if you join us here at Emmanuel Faith, either here in person or online, you can always even pause this, go catch up on a sermon if you'd like to.
Yep.
And
allow that.
Join back in. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so so this week this was a fun sermon. I really like this. I think it was a very timely sermon. I think this was a important one for us to dive into a little bit. You want to give us a quick little
I'd love to. So this is Psalm 133. We're still in our series on the Psalms of Ascent.
Mm-hmm.
And I've at first I was going, okay, do we want to teach through a section of Psalms for 14 weeks, 13 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
It felt like sort of a long series. I had even the Psalms in general, preaching them is a challenge, especially in an environment like Emmanuel Faith, where we really value expositional preaching, walking through a text. Sometimes the Psalms don't totally lend themselves to that.
They don't.
And so I was sort of at the initial onset of the series wondering, is this going to be a good fit for our church body? And the feedback that we've gotten has been, people have really loved this.
Absolutely.
And I mean, the messages you've given have been great. The other pastors that have preached have just done a phenomenal job. And so it was fun to jump back into Psalm 133, which is a Psalm about, I'm sorry, 131. What week am I on?
Yeah, we're here. We're right here. You're studying probably for that one.
We talked about that in writing team today.
That's funny. I didn't even cross my mind.
You're like, yeah,
131,
of course. No, 131, obviously. And it's a psalm about humility. And I say that with a lot of confidence. And I also, in the same breath, want to say, and the psalm never mentions humility.
It never says that. Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting psalm in that way. I wouldn't say it's subtle. Now, this actually 132, I think, is subtle. I think 132 is well, I won't give it away, but there's the 132. You need the backstory to catch what's not said.
Oh,
because I think what's not said is actually as much of the point as what is said.
Yeah.
So that's a teaser for this
week.
So
that's coming up this week, Psalm 132, which is the longest of these psalms,
the
right?
longest of the psalms.
Of the not of all the psalms, but of the ascent psalms. And so that's quite a bit to go through.
The song that people are going to hear is, we'll give a little bit of a teaser.
A little teaser here.
Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayers.
Okay. All right.
Boom. All right.
There you go.
But 131,
131.
I can read I can read the whole thing here in just a few moments. It says, "Oh Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. I've calmed my spirit, I have calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me." And one of the things that I wanted to do this week was not only talk about the characteristics of humility that the psalmist is pointing out, but I wanted to try to give people some diagnostic questions to ask themselves to really try to get underneath, am I humble? And I think it's a hard question to answer for ourselves.
Yes. Well, yes.
So I said there's two reasons humility is challenging. Number one is we tend to see ourselves through rose-colored glasses. We give ourselves the benefit of the doubt often, and we even, make excuses for why we do some of the things we do. So it's hard for us to be honest with ourselves. Second thing about humility, I don't know why this cracks me up so much, and one of the reasons it's slippery is because once you realize you're humble, you have a tendency to be prideful about it.
Exactly. Like, oh yes, I'm finally humble. Oops,
I did it. I made it.
And then,
wah, wah, wah.
but isn't that great? That's like it's the perfect virtue, because you can't fully acknowledge that you even have it,
right?
without having a little bit of pride,
which stirs up all sorts of questions when Moses writes that he's the most humble man in the world. But that's for a whole nother podcast, I think.
Right.
Anyway, so we talked about this idea that but from Jesus's teaching, right, that humility, Jesus said, and he's not, mincing words, which he very rarely did. He said, whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. And so he said, essentially, he's saying, if you want to puff yourself up, you will be brought low. It might not be immediately, but that will happen eventually. And yet, if you're willing to lower yourself, God will lift you up. And I think that point alone is, I think, worth wrestling with, and worth, it's what the psalm is essentially about, that humility positions us to experience God's presence and to embrace God's power. That was sort of the main idea and thrust of where we went. On Sunday.
It opens you up to experience God's
presence. Can I hit on this?
Please.
Like, for me, there's a number of passages that I sort of have either memorized or in the back of my mind, and that are sort of, I don't know about go-to passages, but certainly passages that have just captured my heart. And a lot of them are ones that I learned as a young kid, but this one is like new for me, this passage. And it says this, it's Isaiah chapter 51 or 57, verse 15. Isaiah writes, "For thus says the one," speaking of God, "who is high and lifted up, who inhabits eternity, whose name is holy." So this is what God's saying. I dwell in the high and holy place. So like all of us would go, amen.
Yeah, right.
Like God dwells in heaven.
Okay,
we can read Revelation. That. Amen. And also with him who is of contrite and lowly spirit, to revive the spirit of the lowly, to revive the heart of the contrite. And, to say that God is close to the brokenhearted. But Isaiah is saying, like, he's saying that, but in the same way that God dwells in heaven.
Yeah.
God dwells with the humble.
That's amazing.
That God dwells with the broken. God dwells with those who are longing for his presence. And I just thought, man, that's a new one for me to go. That's one I want to memorize. And that's one that seems like has gotten some traction in my heart.
Wow. So the same way that God dwells when in the place of glory that we all know, he chooses to say, I mean, I also dwell in the people who are the lowest of the low. So here are his created beings, right? That is the lowest of the low, right? In a sense, right? I mean, in comparison to his place in splendor, not only just any created being, but the ones who are the humble. Wow.
Yeah. So
that's powerful.
Yeah, that was a passage that really just caught my heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so that's what we talked about. We talked about humility, and one of the things that I've been sort of wrestling with is this idea that humility is really just honesty. It's all it is. It's honesty about two things primarily, but and awareness of two things. One, who is God, and what is God like? And so my encouragement to our church body was, and if you want to grow in humility, dive into God's holiness. Like study that, wrestle with that, and even just reminding people there is a God, it's not you. I think that's a healthy thing for us to remind ourselves of often.
Yes.
Because sometimes our default can start to be, because of because of sin, to be incurvatus in se, right? As the reformers would say, like to be curved in on oneself.
Yeah. To be as Gwen reminded us, to be the ego edging God out. That's what we tend to do. Left to our own devices, we look inward. It becomes about us,
right,
instead of about others and about God, right?
Yeah, we sang at the modern services. We sang "We Fall Down" at the very end of the service. We fall down. We lay our crowns at the feet of Jesus. We cry, "Holy, holy, holy." And I love that picture. That's exactly what Isaiah does, right? He hears, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty."
Yeah.
The whole earth is filled with his glory. And then he falls down. And I thought, what a great picture of awareness of God, awareness of self equals humility. So that was sort of the first idea. And that came out of the psalmist writing, "My heart, oh Lord." So he's going, "Oh Lord, my heart is not so lifted up." So I'm looking at God and I'm looking at myself at the same time. "Oh Lord, my heart."
Which I love that. Well, I love that idea that awareness of God and awareness of myself. So if you really understood who God is, then you're gonna realize how far away you are, in a sense, right? And where how we ought to think about ourselves.
Yeah.
I love the illustration you gave about the mountain. Because that's like when you notice the Lord. So explain that one.
The mountain one,
or the sorry, at the top of El Capitan. Yes.
I'm suggesting that when you're in the presence of greatness and otherness, the natural tendency is to get lower. Like and if you're going up to the edge of El Cap and looking over, my guess is you're hugging the ground. You're as low as you can get. At least I would be.
Yes,
because I don't love heights, and inching my way towards the edge and like, oh my goodness. I think that's a good picture of humility in the presence of holiness. Like we get low. It's natural. It feels natural.
It does. Absolutely does.
Because what feels unnatural is to like beat our chest and think we're something in the presence of the one who created it all.
And if you do that, then clearly you haven't quite comprehended the presence. You haven't quite fully understood who the Lord is, and that's what you're getting at.
And I love the way that this Puritan pastor John Flavel put it, where he said, "They that know God will be humble.
Yeah.
They that know themselves cannot be proud."
Right.
So I would say, if you're beating your chest, there's like you only have to get 1 out of 2 to bow.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly.
Really, like you could understand how much you're in need and go, okay, yeah. Or how great God is. Yeah. Both obviously is what's appropriate and what's true, but you have to be 0 for 2 to beat your chest. You have to be totally unaware of yourself and totally unaware of God.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, and this is where our problem has been all along, ever since the beginning, right? I mean, that we've got one of those two wrong. At least one, oftentimes both. Oftentimes we think that we are so much better, and we believe the lie that the serpent gave Adam and Eve in the beginning, that God doesn't really care as much. That God doesn't really doesn't really care about your interests, or he's lying, whatever that is. He's wrong, and I'm right. And I can be like God.
Yep.
Right? That's been where we are.
Yeah, that line, "I can be like God," is really like, you can't understand God and you can't understand self if you make that statement. That's an error in both directions.
Totally. Oh.
So that we talked about that, and I think it's a good challenge. So I mean, some of the questions I asked people were, is confession a regular part of your life with God? How often do you look down on or past other people? And I think those are good questions to ask.
Absolutely.
So I'd encourage people to ask him.
I know. I love it. I love some of the suggestions, and maybe I can't remember if these were towards the end or something. Even like we live in a culture that we share our opinions a lot right now.
Oh yeah.
Right.
That was in the second part.
Was it the second part? Okay.
Yeah, no, which is
there.
fine. Because he says, I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. And so he's saying there's things that are outside my bounds of knowledge and insight. And so I really wanted to like try my best to go, what does that mean in terms of humility? And I think it means that we admit we have limitations. We admit we have blind spots. We admit there's things we don't know. We also admit there are things we think we know that we're wrong about. And that's humbling.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes.
So yeah, the opinions.
The opinions. Yeah. I think the challenge you gave us was to not share your opinion unless you're asked. So because let me just say, I have an opinion about that. I'm just kidding.
Josh, what is your opinion about that?
Much. See, I can just throw it out. My opinion is that is hard.
It's really hard.
and yet it's convicting. It's convicting. There's been many times this week where I thought to myself, I would like to share my opinion about that. But I thought to myself, oh, self, you have not been asked.
Yeah, I've failed at that, man.
I know I have.
I have.
But Beth and I have. That's been a conversation that we've had, and she's looked at me and said, "I have not asked for your opinion." Well, you listened well, hon. Way to go.
I met somebody for coffee on Tuesday, and I had that in the back of my mind, and I said, I have an opinion about that. Could I share it with you?
There you go.
And they're like, well, yeah, of course.
Why do you think you're here?
Okay. Good.
That's good. Way to go. Yeah.
I sort of caught myself like, I'm not just going to impose. And then they get the chance to say yes or no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. But even the fact that you recognize that it's an opinion.
It's an opinion.
That's huge.
I think that's something worth naming at times,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's because there's a lot of experts these days.
Right.
And I mean, okay, what was the line? I do not occupy myself with great. Oh, but let's see. With things too great or too marvelous for me. In other words, like the problem, one of our problems, I guess, today, my problems, and let me share an opinion about it, I guess. Is we've got like all of the information sort of at our fingertips. Right? I mean, now sort of. Now we can't comprehend it all. And we can't see how it all comes together, but there's this illusion that the internet, that Google gives you everything.
I mean, it is shocking to me how many people are just experts in both like public law and and virus spread.
Yeah, virology. Right?
I mean, like,
but immunology,
all of it.
They're all.
And I say that sort of sarcastically, obviously, but I do think that the temptation of the digital age is you can read enough to think about a subject when people have gone to school for decades to become proficient in that field of study.
Yes.
And I think it's okay to say, and it doesn't mean we don't try to learn. It doesn't mean we don't try to grow, but I think there is an aspect of humility to say, I don't know everything about that.
Yeah.
And maybe I never will.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And to be learning is learning from someone even that you may not even agree with, or that you don't want them to teach you, whatever that is. That's what we do in school. I mean, that's what school is. I see this because my kids are going back to school right now, right? I mean, our kids are just at that point, and at least my high schooler now, I have a high schooler. Caleb is in high school. That kid does not want to learn anything. So he's a high schooler. He's a high schooler. So there's not a
What's there to-
moment in his day.
I didn't need to learn anything in high school. I knew everything in high school.
That's true. That's probably his problem. He already thinks he knows it all. But I mean, becoming a learner is almost always learning in times when you don't want to.
Yeah,
right.
That's so true.
I mean, now you can, we sit down and read books and things like that, and I get that. But so much of life is putting ourselves in a position where I have to learn this. I need to learn this. If I don't learn this, then I'm not going to be able to XYZ, whatever that is, right? And that's where my kids are, and I think that's where we all need to be. That's a place of humility, is coming under someone else.
Yeah.
And realizing I don't have all the answers.
Yeah. Or even like what you shared at the very beginning about, gosh, I've walked with people through grief and pain, and in walking through it firsthand, there's to this extent, there's some different things that I'm seeing.
Oh yeah.
And I think that humility of going, man, Lord, yeah, you've still got us all on the journey. I think that's probably the point, right? Like,
yeah,
if we can't say there are some things that are too great or too marvelous for us, like really what we're saying is there's nothing left to learn.
Ooh.
And I think the only person that can say that even in eternity is God himself.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
I just think a posture of humility goes, oh, there's still more. And I don't know about you, but there's something about that I go, yeah.
I know. That's exactly. There is always going to be more to learn.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, always. I'm not talking this side of heaven.
Right.
I'm talking always, because there's no possibility that we will ever become eternal. we will never become infinite,
right?
Because we've had a beginning, and so we will be everlasting. Okay, from here forward, that's not eternal. God is the only one who is eternal. God is the only one who's infinite in knowledge and understanding. And from any starting point, doesn't matter when you start, here, there, future, back, wherever, you can't cross an infinity.
Right?
You can't get to it. You will never be able to access all of the knowledge of God. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's awesome, because I think of heaven as every moment of being like a wow.
Yeah.
Like a like that aha.
And where we're willing to get low enough to actually grow and receive it. And we don't have to pretend like we know it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like Carolyn's comment here. She says this, that the wonder is that God was willing to experience being one of us. So she's tying this right back in Jesus, right back to Jesus. He had his paternity. So, okay, he was the Son of God. His Father is God, right? But he emptied himself of all that would protect himself from the learning, the dependency, the pain of being human, out of love beyond measure. So away from the God's presence who's there. And we live in a culture of success measurement here. We live very differently. Wow.
Carolyn.
Carolyn.
Now it's getting convicting.
Dang. I know. I know.
So good, Carolyn.
That's
so good.
Really good. That's right out of Philippians 2.
Yeah.
That's the amazing thing about this, is that we follow not only just humble prophets, or not only just humble authors. We follow a God in Jesus, who it says that God himself is humble. It has humbled himself, even has chosen to be humble. That's wild.
Yeah. I don't know if I said it like this, but the way I wrote it in my sermon is maybe the most surprising thing about humility is that Jesus was humble.
Yeah.
The only person to ever walk the earth who had every right to walk with pride didn't. He's the Alpha and the Omega, the creator and the sustainer. And yet he's humble.
Yeah.
That's the plot twist of it all.
It really is.
And the irony is the only person who could walk with pride didn't. And every person is marked with the sin nature that causes us to be prideful, right?
Mm.
So like nobody is outside the bounds of
Hmm.
pride, at least at some point in their life, right? So I
Mhm.
think that's the plot twist in a sense.
Yeah. Oh, it totally is. It totally is. That humility, which it can get a bad rap. Like, I mean, people, the word has been used for like, oh, a humble person, meaning like a poor person, like an unfortunate person. And so a lot of people, I think even in our culture, wouldn't even like that phrase.
Yeah,
They wouldn't.
I
Yeah.
was reading about Aristotle's Great Souled Man,
Huh.
and essentially, like it's the antithesis of humility.
Interesting.
And one of the things I forget who I was reading last week that pointed this out, but historically, humility was not a virtue.
Mm.
It was seen as something to be rejected,
Yep.
and really
Yep.
until Jesus. And
Interesting.
he was the one. And so even I was sort of thinking, I wonder why this psalm doesn't name humility. Maybe that's a part of the reasoning. I'm not sure. But Jesus, it's funny to say it like this, but put humility on the map, like made he was in a sense, the one who made it a virtue,
Yeah.
something to be pursued. So
Yeah. Oh, that is
which is
powerful.
why his teaching on leaders not lording it over, but lifting others up.
Yeah.
It was so profound.
Oh, it changes everything. And that I mean, I love the way you put that though, that the one guy who had every right to not be humble, right? He's not by right, by birth, as like paternity, as Carolyn said, but also by the way he lived.
Totally.
So like it not only just because of who he was, but then he went and earned it in a sense, right? He earned the right to brag, and yet didn't. And the way that Philippians 2 words that is just so powerful that it's as if because of that, as if because God is so identified with the humble, in Isaiah, like right, that because of that he exalted Jesus.
It does read like that.
It really does.
Yeah. Therefore,
yeah,
he exalted him to the highest place, the name that is above every name.
Yeah. Because he humbled himself even to death. Right. I mean,
amazing.
That is.
Okay, so like we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but this was my favorite part of this psalm. Once you get it, right?
Okay.
So in the way that it applies to humility, he says, "But I've calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother." And I wrestled with that. Like, what is it? What is he talking about? Weaned child with its mother, and I went, oh my goodness, the psalmist is like calling people out for being whiners.
Yeah.
And babies, and saying, like, hey, if you want to look at whether or not you're humble, look at how often you whine.
You complain.
You
whine.
You think, I need something and I need it now. That's the pre-weaned baby, right? And and in the weaning process going, I think the baby's like, if I don't get fed right now, I think I'm going to die. I'm sure I'm going to die. And I was convicted by thinking about how many times I have similar thoughts, right? Of if I don't get this thing, if this doesn't happen, this timeline, like I need this and I need it now. And I don't think I ever reflected on that as being pride. Or as being a lack of humility.
Yeah.
But I deserve this type of an attitude, or complaining when I don't get something type of an attitude. I think it really does, if you dig deep enough, show a lack of humility or a presence of pride.
Yeah, you really are prideful. I'm just kidding. I'm sitting here saying, yeah, as if I'm joking. Like, wow, wait a minute. Wow, Josh.
You really didn't need to work.
No. I'm saying yes, and I'm agreeing with you because that rings true. That really does. That we, it's like the pleasure that a baby gets from that, the bottle, okay, or the little, whatever you call those things, the little sucker things. What are they called?
I believe it's called
That's
a nipple,
what-
Josh.
Well, that's not. I'm not talking about the nipple, but you give the baby their little
Pacifier?
pacifier. It pacifies. That's what I'm looking for. That word. It pacifies them. The nipple does too, I guess. But thanks. This was going to be a PG episode. No, I'm just kidding. But it pacifies. They're whining. They want it, but then there's
Yeah.
like the pleasure.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
just after the pleasure.
Right.
And it's as if we're like, God, I don't want to go through the hard times. This was even me coming to work.
Mhm.
I don't want to go through the
Mhm.
pain and sitting in my own grief. I want to distract, and I want to go and
Yep.
do something.
Yep.
Right. I want the pleasure. God, give me that. And yet, it's as if I can control
Right.
that.
And
Right.
if I don't get it, I'm gonna whine.
Yes.
Or I'm gonna throw a fit. So I get it.
Yes. And maybe the problem is that and sadly in our society, I think we can control, we can hide pretty well. We can mask our pain. We can mask some of these things so that we act a lot like babies, a lot, because we can fix things. We can, you can have it delivered next day now. You don't have to wait 2 anymore. Right. You can kind of, you can cover over a lot of our problems. And yet the more we do that, the more I think we're layering on kind of layers of pride, just covering the problems that are there.
Totally. Yeah.
That's a powerful
Yeah. I really thought, once I sort of wrestled with the picture and came to some convictions about what the psalmist was saying, I went, wow, that's a powerful picture.
Yeah, man, like a weaned child is my soul. How about a tattoo of that? Like a
boom.
weaned child is my soul.
No
Ugh.
whining.
Yeah.
I'm weaned.
Oh man.
So I think the really practical pieces of that were just asking, how often do you think I deserve? How often do you complain? And I don't know, God had some challenges for me in that. I've been wrestling with it this week. And so my hope is that folks in our church body and others who listen to it are challenged as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I absolutely loved it. You quoted some C.S. Lewis in there as well.
Oh man, if I could. So there's two. All right, for our podcast listeners here, there's two either books or just chapters, if you want, that I would encourage you to read if you're interested in this subject. First, I would encourage you to get A.W. Tozer's Knowledge of the Holy and read his section on the holiness of God. It's just profound and it's so good. The second work I would encourage you to get is C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. And I believe it's the chapter entitled The Greatest Sin that is on pride.
Yeah.
So, if you flip it, the opposite is humility.
Exactly.
And so it's where there's a number of quotes that I've cited from him, but they all came from that same chapter. And it's just, in a very Lewisian way, it is just brilliant.
Oh,
it's
my word.
so good.
Yes.
Because he comes at it from such a different angle. I love the way that he comes at virtues like humility, and he really wrestles with them in pragmatic ways.
Absolutely does. Absolutely does. In fact, he does it in the Screwtape Letters as well, which is absolutely brilliant. Can I read?
Yeah,
this?
Please.
So the Screwtape Letters, you gotta remember in reading this, it is unique. So C.S. Lewis is writing letters as if an older demon is writing to a younger demon. And so whenever you read this, you got to realize when he says the enemy, he's talking about God.
Right.
Okay. So
that's important.
That's important. So, and so he's teaching his pupil, a younger demon, how to tempt somebody. And he's talking about humility. And he says, by this method, thousands of humans have been brought to think that humility means pretty women trying to believe they are ugly and clever men trying to believe they're fools. Okay, sorry. By this method, let me go back a little bit, is the great thing he says to do in humility is to make him value an opinion for some quality other than truth. thus introducing an element of dishonesty and making and make believe into the heart of what otherwise threatens to become a virtue. So this was back to what you were talking about, opinions, that we share our opinions as if they are fact. And
Not
what he's
only do we
saying,
share, we believe they
we
are.
believe they are fact, yes. And he says that by this method, thousands have been brought to think that humility means now believing that they are ugly, or beautiful women thinking they're ugly, clever men trying to believe they're fools, as if it's just believing a make-believe.
Yeah.
See, or because this is what happens when people try to be humble.
Yeah.
They say things like that, or they'll say things like, "Oh, it was nothing. I'm no good. I'm not very good at that." Then, instead of just "thank you," or "praise the Lord," right? Or anything like that. I love that. And he goes on and says, the enemy. So now he's talking about God, wants to bring the man to a state of mind in which he could design the best cathedral in the world and know it to be the best and rejoice in the fact without being any more or less or otherwise glad as having done it than he would be if it had been done by another. Okay, now get this.
That's profound.
That is crazy. So he goes and creates something amazing, and he's excited about the thing. He's excited about what good has been done. He'd be just as excited as if someone else had done it. So we can be excited about and glad about and happy about what God is doing in this world, but we don't have to be the ones doing it.
Yeah. That's the second line of verse 1 in the Psalm says, my eyes are not, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not arrogant in the NASB.
Yeah.
So I think that's that same idea.
Eyes, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not too high. Oh,
yeah, not lifted too high.
Oh, that's really good. Anyway, yeah, C.S. Lewis.
That's so good.
The Mystery of Genuine Humility, I believe, is the name of that that chapter. But
so good.
Just love that. Oh man! Now
I brought a book.
Did you? Oh, good. Wait a minute. We didn't talk about this until right now, and so, ladies and gentlemen, Ryan brought a book, and look at it. Oh, it fades in and out. Look. I love it. Ryan,
I think it's supposed to go there. Remember, it can sit there.
It can stay. Okay. So, Ryan, what'd you bring?
I brought a book that is a little bit outside of my stream, not a whole lot, but just like a few degrees off.
Okay.
And but I loved it.
Okay.
I loved it.
I can't even see what the book is. Oh, nice. Okay.
So the book is entitled Gentle and Lowly.
Okay.
And here, I'll tell you why it's a little bit outside of my stream. It's really trying to take the work of a number of different Puritans. And I like Puritans. I just don't read them a whole lot, and it's a little bit more reformed than I would tend to be. So that's but I thought that Dane Ortlund just did a phenomenal job getting to the heart of Christ. And I would recommend this book as a devotional. The chapters are really short, and let me see how many of them there are. There are 23 chapters.
Okay. Oh, so you can take bite-sized chunks.
You could do one a day, real easy. But it really, he talks about the fact that when Jesus defines himself, he says, "I'm gentle and humble of heart," or lowly of heart.
Wow.
So that's Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 through 30.
Okay.
But come to me, I am gentle and lowly, humble in heart. And so the Puritans' approach to authorship would have been, they're going to write an entire book on not just like one verse, but like one phrase in a book. And so Ortlund talks about that and really does the same thing. And so he wants to really wrestle with and try to identify, what does it mean that Jesus is gentle and lowly? And he spends an entire book trying to really get to the heart of what that means. And I just thought there were some really brilliant, beautiful chapters in here. It made me really appreciate and come and realize the soft side of the
Mhm.
Puritans. The Puritans are
Ah,
known for being fairly rigid.
absolutely.
I mean, the name gives it away a little bit, but and sometimes sometimes in reading the Puritans, you can wonder the heart. Where's the heart? Where's the affection? And even though they talk about, feeding their affections for Christ and slaying their sin, this really brings out the heart. And so guys like Sibbs and Bunyan and just a number of others who Goodwin, Spurgeon, Edwards, Warfield, all these guys are quoted in here. And so
that's right. Is that where you got that quote that you used from
Flavel?
Flavel?
No,
yeah. No.
it
Okay.
was not.
Okay.
It was not. I forget where I read that one.
Oh man.
But yeah.
Well, it's always so neat.
What? I think it might have been.
Okay.
Yeah, because
I
think I snapped a picture of it.
I just want to make sure Dane gets credit here. Just kidding.
Dane, yeah.
No, but I love that, and I love that especially that this is in people who we think is humble in a sense, right? The Puritans, especially, right? We think that was kind of part of their nature, it just was. But to show that actually was something they strived for, they saw as a virtue, not just something that came easy.
Yes,
I think that's important. That this is one of those things that it's definitely not easy, but it's something that all of us, no matter where we are, no matter who we are, no matter how much we have, no matter how little we have, it's still a struggle.
Yeah.
To come under, to be humble.
One of my favorite chapter in this, let me get the right name of it, sort of towards the end, is a chapter about how God is rich in mercy and what that means, and really nuancing that out, teasing that out in a lot of detail. Was so good.
Okay, well, you're gonna have to read it to find out exactly how. That is awesome. Well, once again, thank you, Gwen.
Yes.
For our sign for that segment.
Love it.
That is wonderful. And with that, this is that's gonna end our time, everybody. Thank you so much. So many of you joined in on the comments. And
so
everything.
Good to see you all.
It is great to see so many of you following along. As always, we love answering questions. We love joining in this conversation. And Ryan, been a blast.
Yeah, thanks for
getting back in.
Thanks for jumping on. We're praying for you, for your family, and
thank you. Lord willing, we'll be back here next week, and it'll be a little bit of who knows what for a while, but we'll get on the routine one day.
We will.
Or we won't. And that's okay.
The Lord knows.
The Lord knows. And whether you can join us here live and interact, or make sure, if not, go find us on podcast feed wherever you can, Vitalogy podcast. And we'd love to continue to interact with you there. And as always, we want to say thank you for joining, and God bless.
Yeah, God bless. We'll see you. Have a great week.